We've got a great program today, so let's get started. I'm Janice Bachman, and I have the privilege of being president of the OC Forum Board. And it's my pleasure to welcome you to a great program today, She Builds Capital. So today's conversation centers on women's financial experiences, but it's absolutely an event for everyone. That's because financial confidence strengthens teams, workplaces, and communities of all kinds. So today we're presenting this in recognition of Women's History Month, and our program today is intentionally designed to be accessible, candid, and practical. So you'll hear real stories and smart strategies that anyone can take, whether you're just beginning your financial journey or you're leading teams through complex decisions. You might be wondering, why did we choose this conversation? Why this topic? Why now? Because real life is unpredictable, as we all see every day, and that makes money complicated. Rising costs here in Orange County, career paths that don't always follow a straight line, caregiving responsibilities, and inconsistent benefits all have a direct effect on financial well-being. Employers increasingly recognize that financial stress shows up at work, and that supporting financial confidence is not just a personal issue, but it's also a leadership one. So at our core, OC Forum exists to bring people together for smart conversations about the issues that matter most to the community. We're so glad that you've joined us today for another timely, relevant, and insightful discussion. We really appreciate your support of the forum, and thank you so much for being here. We're also very grateful to Wells Fargo and Knightsbridge Wealth Management for supporting this conversation today. And we also want to thank all of our annual sponsors who make OC Forum's programming possible. I also want to give a special thank you and shout out to UCI and UCI Health, our title sponsors for the 6th consecutive year. Thank you so much for your continued commitment. And I'd also like to recognize our OC Forum Board of Directors. If you were a member of the Board of Directors, would you please stand? This is the most active board I've ever been on, and these dedicated leaders bring together these programs month after month. They work tirelessly to continue to make this content engaging and relevant and bring it to you. So thank you so much to the board. Before we start, I have my regular housekeeping items. Please take a look at your table. You will see that there is a QR code on your table. I encourage you to please go to that QR code, take the small survey. It's very short, but it really does help us in terms of deciding what programming we should bring to you in the future. Please also use the comment cards that you're going to find on the table. You can ask questions of our panel. So if you have questions, we would love to take them. We will collect them during the program and we will ask them to the panel. And then finally, today's program is being recorded, as all of our programs are, and we'll be posting that to our YouTube channel, so you can share that with your colleagues and contacts. At this time, I'd like to invite Miles Yorman to the podium. He's principal at Knightsbridge Wealth Management, and welcome up to say a few words.
Thank you so much. Hi, everybody. I'm Miles Yorman. I'm a principal and portfolio manager at Knightsbridge Wealth Management here in Newport Beach. For over 25 years, our mission has been to build a wealth management firm that we'd be proud to send our own family members to as full fee-paying clients. We're a group of experienced, tax-focused investment professionals dedicated to building deep, trusted relationships with our clients, always being guided by our values of honor, which we interpret as always doing what's right for the client, excellence, progress, and community, which we mostly interpret as treating our team members well, but I'm happy to be out here in the broader community today. Our money is always invested alongside our clients, and we can advise you on all financial affairs, including initiating retirement plans for your businesses, and helping individuals and families with unbiased financial advice. While we have deep roots in Orange County, our dedication to our mission and core values has led to a continuous growth, with the OC Register naming us as one of the fastest growing businesses in Orange County last year. We're also very proud to be a sponsor of OC Forum's She Builds Capital event. In what is still considered a male-dominated industry, I'm proud to share that our own leadership team is comprised of nearly 50% women. Finally, this event aligns well with the mission of our firm. We believe that everyone should have access to tools and resources to ensure they're confident in their financial security. And you'll be in good hands today with my colleague, Lindsey, Monina, an outstanding wealth advisor and leader within our firm. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Miles, and thank you so much to Knightsbridge Wealth Management for supporting this program and supporting the OC Forum. I'd now like to also thank you, Wells Fargo, our partner today, and welcome Julie Toman-Post from Wells Fargo, who's also a valued member of our board, to come up, say a few words, and also introduce today's panel.
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Julie Toman-Post. I have the pleasure of serving as a member of the board of OC Forum and the Assistant Vice President of the Wells Fargo Foundation. I am so honored to be part of this conversation today because I look around me and I see so many leaders really focused on impact in our community. And this is such a timely conversation to have, as many of our minds are on the topic of financial opportunity and education. You know, there was a moment in my career when I was doing fine, financially on paper, but I never really wanted to take a deep look at my finances because it was just very overwhelming, all the information that was out there. And this was BT, right? Before TikTok, before all that information was even more multiplied. But I remember one day, coming into my bank branch and my banker was asking me, "Hey, I see you have a good size deposit here." It was my bonus. Do you want to put that into a CD? And I just remember asking her, "What? You want to buy it? Are you asking for music recommendations? What's going on?" And I realized I need to be asking more questions. And so I asked her some more questions. I went to my CPA, started just taking little steps, and never really realizing then that those tiny steps would eventually help prepare me for those financial milestones that, once upon a time I only dreamed about reaching. So, that moment stays with me. And being here at Wells Fargo, I'm really proud to be able to say we are the bank of doing. And that means that we take intention and we help people turn that into action, right? Conversations about money touch on some of the most important parts of our lives. That's security, flexibility, caregiving, and the ability to really make choices when it matters most. And creating financial opportunity, it starts with meeting people where they are and making those next steps feel achievable. So today is about building capital in all forms. And I hope you leave with just one idea that you can execute on, something that will take you or your organization to that next level. I'm excited to introduce today's panel. And these are leaders who bring different perspectives and shared commitment to empowering people through confidence and action. So without further ado, I'd love to start the introductions. I'll introduce all of our panelists and invite you to the stage together. So first off, we have our moderator, Ms. Sue Parks, President and CEO. I know. She really... Miss Orange County as well. President and CEO of the Orange County United Way. She is a driving force behind county-wide initiatives in financial security, homelessness, and student success. Susan brings decades of executive leadership and community impact to guide this conversation. Next, we have Natasha Mata, our Senior Vice President, Regional Bank Executive at Wells Fargo. With 34 years in financial services and a deep commitment to community service and financial opportunity, Natasha offers a frontline view into the financial realities facing professionals and families in our region. Next, I'd like to bring up Lindsey Monina, CFA Wealth Advisor at Knightsbridge Wealth Management, an investment-led, research-grounded advisor with experience in institutional portfolio management and corporate strategy. Lindsey will share practical insights on building financial clarity and confidence. And last but not least, I'd love to invite Christine Allen, partner in law Stein Anderson. A certified specialist in estate planning, trust, and probate law, Christine brings more than 15 years of experience in guiding families through complex estate matters and legacy planning.
And great taste in shoes. I know. Thank you.
Shoes. So I think everyone is mic'd up and ready to go. Thank you so much, ladies.
And I think I'm going to start off and ask Lindsey to share some opening thoughts for us.
Sure. So we got a great introduction from some folks, but let's dive deep into what brings us here today. So what kind of unique financial challenges might women face in today's day and age? And a lot of this comes down to some things that you probably know from a common sense standpoint, but the statistics might, when you dive into them, surprise you a little bit. So first and foremost, women live longer than men. This is a well-known fact, but what kind of impact can that have on finances over time? So women on average live at least 5 years longer than men, and life expectancies are also getting longer for everyone. So 50% of non-smoking women will live at least 25 years in retirement that are age 65 today. That's a lot longer than we've seen in previous generations. And what that requires is a lot more savings at retirement to sustain you through the rest of your life. And for women, because they live longer, they need more of that. And it's actually, I was surprised by this statistics, 30% of women will live to be age 90. I'm sorry, 95. That's 30 years in retirement. So, yeah, I don't know how I'll feel when I'm age 90. That's a little scary to me, but hopefully I'll have the portfolio to sustain me at that age. Okay, so, and just comparatively speaking, that's about 10% higher on average than men. So in retirement, it probably won't come as a shock to any of you that Social Security will not cover all of the expenses that you have to pay when you are in retirement. And so if we break down the numbers, for somebody that's age 65 today, and they make $150,000 because they've progressed and become a high income earner, 20% of their monthly expenses 20 to 25% are going to be covered by Social Security. Only a quarter of what they need to live in retirement is going to come from that Social Security check. So where does the rest come from? Now, numbers suggest you spend a little bit less when you're retired, about 30% less on average, but that 40 to 45% gap that Social Security is not going to cover for your spending has to come from somewhere. And that's through invested retirement savings. And that's why I have a job. So if women live longer, they need larger portfolios. So how much, let's step back and say, I'm 65 today and I make $150,000. How much do I need to comfortably retire and know that I'll be able to sustain myself and my spending, live until that 90, 95 years of age? So at $150,000 of income now, you need $1.335 million of invested assets at retirement to sustain you through all those years in retirement. And I think for women, there's even unique challenges associated with not just the longevity piece, but even getting to that 1.3 million that you need. For most women, childbearing is a part of their situation. And as women start families, that can have really distinct impacts on their ability to continue to contribute to savings accounts, and accumulate what you need. Some women choose to leave the workforce entirely. Others do not. We have a lot more instances of dual income households. I'm in one myself. And there's many more female breadwinners, but still that decision to start a family, step away, can impact your career arc and trajectory in very, very meaningful ways. And really kind of all that comes together, and women can face challenges accumulating what they need to sustain themselves in retirement. And then they also need more to be able to sustain longer lives in retirement. And I think those are sort of how the numbers break down, but there's also different emotional components, I think, for women. What I've seen among my clients is can be a much stronger association with security for women and money. And that can sometimes lead to, in behavioral finance, there's these biases. And sometimes, women's association of money with security, their family's security, can cause them to be overly conservative and not have benefit from that same compound growth factor. So there's financial challenges, there's emotional challenges to overcome with money. It's sometimes an uncomfortable topic for folks, but that's what brings us here today. So let's get comfortable.
All right. I love that. So, and I love the word comfort, because that's one of the things that I want to ask everyone now is, how did you get comfortable with money? And a lot of women aren't. So did you always grow up comfortable with this topic, or is it something that you learned in your career? I want to give my personal example that at 5 years old, my father asked me for 2 numbers. They were 8 and 3. And he came home and I had won a long shot daily double. I'm sure that's how most child's financial well-being came from. And that money is still compounding and earning interest. But that's my story. Natasha, tell me yours.
Well, mine's a little bit more personal. So growing up, my parents didn't have very much money, so it was hard to make ends meet month to month. And so when I think about how I grew up, my parents worked really, really hard. They were very, very hardworking. They just didn't make enough money. They didn't make enough money to make ends meet. And so when I was 15 and a half, that was when I actually started to have a job. I was actually able to get a job because I had my work permit. So at that time, I learned very, very quickly how important money was to actually survive. As I grew older, I learned very quickly that money was even more important to actually live the life that you wanted to live. So that motivated me to want to take full advantage of all the opportunities that were in front of me. It also motivated me to work hard and to actually save money for the things that I wanted. So mine's a little bit more personal, and it started at a very, very young age. Yeah.
That's great. Yeah, I started working at 15 as well. Yeah, so the bank account didn't last me very long. So anyway, so Christine, tell me about you. How did you get comfortable with money? Or is that something early on or that you learned in your profession?
I'd say it's a continuing journey. So I assist a lot of clients with a lot of money. It's helpful for me to see how other people have built their wealth, for one thing, and deciding to go out and try to help people in my community so I can build my own business. I will tell you, when I came out of law school, I really hadn't thought through what those loans were going to look like. And, it's monopoly money until they start coming due, right? And I had taken a job at a small firm, and it was just enough to get by and pay for the apartment that I was living in. And I realized as an attorney, I've spent 7 years in school and $186,000 in loans in my own education. I better do something. I better do something to change my trajectory. Otherwise, you're just paying on those loans forever and ever and ever. So I did everything I could in my career to both, bring myself up through my education. I became a certified specialist in my field. And beyond that, just started to go out and explore in my community what I could do to build up my own book of business, essentially, so that I would have some control in my life over what was going on. So I just became a partner last year with the law firm I'm at. I've been in practice.
Thank you.
It took a while. I've just been in practice 20 years now. So, but the truth is, it is a continuing journey, right? And we all have hurdles in our lives we have to overcome. We all have things that might give us setbacks, but we press forward, we press on.
Yeah. So thank you for that, Christine. Yeah, I love that. It's a journey, that we're a journey. So I'm going to come back because I love for you to think about it's never too late, right, to start learning too. And so maybe some points along the way. But Lindsay, when you started off, you sounded like you really have been in this since you were very, very young. So what is your story?
Sure. So I became comfortable with money in way through crisis. So for me, the imprint for the need to get comfortable with this topic came because my mom was the breadwinner. I came from a military family. She was in the Air Force, and through a confluence of factors, she had 4 kids. One of them with special needs. She got injured on the job, and the 2008 financial crisis hit all at the same time. And so life is a journey. Even if you do all the things that you need to do right, sometimes you just get a curveball that can throw you for such a loop that through that experience in my family, the struggles I saw my parents go through, and I was at an age where I really noticed those things. I was a preteen at that point. And so because of that experience in my family, it really imprinted on me the need to understand these concepts, have a savings base that I could go back to and be wise with money. It's an important topic. And so that drew me and created my interest in this area. And I've been on the journey ever since. And the nice thing about it is you never stop learning new things. So it's an endless treasure trove.
So great. It is. So one of the things at United Way, and some of you have heard this before, but every other year we do what's the real cost measure. What does it cost to actually live in Orange County, and include all the costs if you didn't have any assistance, if you didn't have any help. And for a family of 4 with a child in preschool, a child in school, it's something like $129,000 a year. That's a lot of money. That's a lot of money. So when we think about that, you in your workplaces, how do you help inspire women to be more thoughtful in how they build capital, right? The idea of just getting by, but this discussion's about building capital. What are some tips that you would give somebody coming up to say, what would you start? How would you start building actual capital? So, Natasha, I'll start with you.
Well, I guess I'll take it back to what I shared earlier about my childhood and growing up. What I realized, what the root cause was of all of this is my parents didn't have the financial literacy that they needed. The reality is that our schools aren't teaching financial literacy today. They weren't teaching it before. So when you think about obviously anyone that's out there, it could be, very many of us in the room, we haven't had the financial literacy training or the classes that we need unless we seek out those resources. And that's the reality of what we're faced with, right? And so when I think about what my parents didn't have and the gaps that actually led us to having the type of life that we had to live because we were struggling with money, I learned very early on that I needed to help people, which is what motivated me to get into banking. It wasn't something that I didn't have an epiphany one day to say, oh, I want to be a banker. That wasn't something that was something that I thought about. But because I lived the way that I lived throughout, my childhood, I realized that my parents didn't have that foundation. So when I think about financial literacy, I think about the importance of what we do as a bank and the importance of us connecting with our customers to better understand what their financial picture looks like. What are their needs? What do we know about what's important to them? What does their financial picture look like today? And how do we help them get to that next level? Because living in today's environment is very, very tough if you don't have the financial literacy. And bottom line, that's the reality that all of us are faced with, right? The other piece is we don't know what the future holds in terms of just the uncertainty. So whether it is that we're looking for retirement as our next step or whatever the case is, I would say for us to dig deep to really understand what have we done, what plans have we put in place to ensure that we are truly ready for that, even though we know the uncertainty in the world today. So my tip for all of us is make sure that you are financially literate and that you understand even the basic fundamentals of budgeting. When I think about all the business owners that are in this room, some of the things that come to mind are how are you helping your employees to have that financial literacy so they can be in a better position foundationally to help support them as their employer. Because I think that's one of the things that I'm proud about with working with Wells Fargo is we talk a lot about ensuring that our bankers are trained to the fullest. So when they're in front of customers, they can actually provide that guidance and the advice that they need so they can continue to further their financial status in the ways that they ultimately want and understanding what the goals are. So really understanding where financial picture is, but seek out those resources to help yourselves, help your employees if you're business owners, help them get financially literate so they can understand even just the basic fundamentals of budgeting. So that, in short, is what I would add because that's probably the biggest gap that we see in today's environment.
So any tips on resources that you would recommend to become more financially literate?
Yeah, I would say, well, for employers specifically, I would say thinking about what are we offering from an employer perspective to our employees, specifically like benefits programs where we're actually teaching all of our employees the basic fundamentals of budgeting, like partnering with Wells Fargo. I'm thinking about the financial literacy classes that we can teach and partnering with all of you employers for your employees and offering benefit packages. That's probably one big one for employers in the room. But I would say for those that are not employers or actually have companies or businesses, I would say leverage your bankers in the banks that obviously you've chosen to be your primary bank. Leverage them. They are trained to provide you the advice and guidance that you need so you can be financially successful. That's one. That's a second one. But certainly ask a lot of questions, and be curious. Doesn't matter how old you are, doesn't matter how young you are, always be curious about that and seek out those resources intentionally so you can be financially educated when it comes to that.
Yeah. No, I agree. So financial literacy, I think it's going to be starting to be taught in schools like 28 or 29. That was something advocacy, made happen, but it's probably not going to be enough. And I think, starting at an early age, right, for all of us. So, Christine, any thoughts on how, if you think about, other women in your maybe in your firm or other women that you've come across, what are resources that you can think of that help build that financial literacy, that financial acumen?
I think one of the biggest things for everyone is just to open communication up. People don't want to talk about money, especially in the employer-employee context. It's just one of those subjects that everybody gets a little riled up about. So part of it is just making sure there's clear communication about what the actual compensation is, what the benefits available are. Is there a health savings account available, for example? Do you offer matching for 401k? My firm puts 3% in whether I match or not. There's a little money growing all the time for me that way, which is wonderful, and all of the employees. And the other thing is, when I have had people come to me and they've been frustrated, they feel like they want to advance to the next level and they're not sure how to get there, how to increase their career, how to grow, is to, support other women. So for women in particular, we don't always support each other as strongly as we could. And sometimes that means telling people what your journey was and being willing to share in that way. Sometimes it means saying, we have a bonus program here. If you bill extra hours, you're going to make more money. If you originate business, you're going to make money. Whatever it is that you might offer, making sure that they're aware of what the opportunities are for advancement. I think that is one way, is just really to bring in the money, right? So, and then beyond that, the other piece is to have on hand referrals. A good financial advisor you can send someone to, which, it's not my job to tell you what to do. And I probably shouldn't be spinning as an employer here, right? But if you have a trusted advisor that you can refer people to, they can go and have a conversation. Bringing people in for workshops, for one thing, even if you just do it once a year as an employer. If you're bringing somebody in to sit down and talk about Here's how we would recommend maybe you budget, or here are some opportunities for tax savings. Knightsbridge actually came into my firm and did a really good job of explaining some tax saving strategies that I've been able to pass along to my clients. So those are the kind of things I think that if you're in a position to offer that kind of help to people, you should.
I love that. So, do you think that, you're talking about people maybe up and coming in your firm? Do you feel like confidence around financial matters puts them on a stronger leadership track, a stronger track to be partners someday?
I mean, absolutely. It's a business at the end of the day. You have to have some awareness of what everybody's putting in, what your overhead looks like. And if you know what you're generating, what you're bringing to the table, for instance, and for a law firm, it's pretty straightforward. We bill at a certain hourly rate. You know what your hours are. You know if your clients are paying. You know if your time is getting cut. If you're just more cognizant of what you're doing in your business to build and grow it, it gives you more confidence to move forward onto the next level, whatever that is.
So it seems like that's something that the room could take away realistically, is to, like, in performance reviews or whatever, or those conversations, kind of like bringing that up as something that makes you a stronger candidate. I mean, that next level.
Yeah, I think that's like, here's how we're building together.
Yeah.
Is really the thing. And it's mutually beneficial, hopefully, for employer and employee. And, I do think the more confidence you have about the finances, the stronger of a candidate you are in whatever field you're in.
I love that. Okay, Lindsey, you probably have, maybe couples coming in. I'm just curious about thinking about your clientele. How confident are normally the women speaking about money versus maybe their partner? Or do you see a difference in how women and men talk about money in your position?
Definitely. So I think it varies by generation, certainly. I'm privileged enough to work with a lot of younger clients that have mastered the fundamentals of budgeting and have achieved career success that puts them in a position to need to work with an advisor. And certainly that's given me a window into, there are tons of examples out there of women who are utterly confident on all of these things and who take the reins on this. But what I find unique is, when I work with couples, typically there's somebody whose personality tends to be more detail oriented, like numbers, work on problem solving and mathematics. And then there might be someone who doesn't take an interest in those kinds of things. And whether it be the whichever partner it ends up being, sometimes that person who has that analytical mindset defaults into taking the lead on finances, and the other person kind of trusts that they're going to do a good job. And so for me, it's less that there's really distinct differences between the way men and women view money. Certainly, I do see that. I think it comes down to making sure, one of the biggest pieces of advice I have is, if you are not the partner or spouse that is in the lead, we all have household division of labor to survive. I'm a working mom. I have young twins. I live and breathe that every single day. And certainly, I'm in the field that I'm in, so I live and breathe finance. My husband has acumen on this subject, but kind of just lets me do what I need to do. But we talk. He's very aware of our own situation. And I think, going back to your point, there's so many tools out there today that can help people understand the specifics of their own financial situation, can help you build a budget, can help you understand your own personal balance sheet. And I think that those things are great to do as a partnership and a unit together, because it's extremely critical. And maybe you've seen some examples of this in your practice. One partner takes the lead on finances and something may happen to that person. They may become incapacitated. They may pass away. And, that leaves the other person in a situation that they're uncomfortable with at the same time that they're grieving the loss of their partner. It's really important that you know inside and out. Maybe you don't know all the details, but you know your personal balance sheet. You know what assets you have, where they are. You know how to access them in the event of an emergency. You know the basics about what's going on. You can see that. you've bought into a plan that you've designed together. You may have differences of opinion on exactly what that plan should be or what the steps along the way might look like. But in general, awareness, I think, is really, really important.
I think that's so critical. And I think we see it again at United Way. We run the 211 OC, the social services hotline. And we have probably 70% of people call are women. And sometimes women, to your point, they're a survivor and they did not realize anything about their financial situation, right? And so it's so important to be partners in this if you're not leading it. Okay, Natasha. So you are, yeah, you're like, no, I'm thinking about you have, I think you have a background in Orange County, but now you're in Orange County here running this big financial institution. Any thoughts on anything different here that you're seeing in Orange County or any feedback for us when you're coming in for seeing the lifestyles here in Orange County?
Well, I'll talk a little bit about financial pressures that we all have, and of course, there's financial pressures everywhere. But specifically for Orange County, I think about financial pressures are forcing professionals, obviously, Orange County, are forcing professionals to manage high cost of living expenses, also being affected by, you know, stagnant wage growth. We also have just some opportunities in increased reliance on credit. So people have to rely on credit more. And so there's a lot of things that, are going on across obviously the country, but specifically in Orange County. As of 2026, the beginning of obviously this year, thousands of healthcare workers actually face layoffs, right? So that's something that they're experiencing. At the same time, cities like Anaheim and Santa Ana are having to navigate through managing budget deficits, which are impacting local jobs. And so this is a reality in Orange County. And so when you think about really providing just the resources that people need, I always think about the basic fundamentals of budgeting, as I've shared already many, many times. And why I share this is because it doesn't matter if you're in Orange County, if you're in any county, quite frankly, everyone is going through this type of experience, and that some of them didn't have that financial literacy that they needed. And so when I think about providing the resources and providing the guidance and advice, I did jot down a few things that I'd like to go over and I jotted it down specifically because I don't want to forget about these. These are some key impacts that I think is going to really help. But thinking about declining purchasing power. So if you think about rising costs for housing, food, the necessities and expenses that we do, just generally speaking, we've seen a lot of stagnant financial situations that have happened to a lot of our clients and customers. We also think about mounting debt, right? The amount of compounding debt that continues to obviously affect a lot of us. Increased costs of living expenses, as I mentioned, heavier reliance on credit cards. Thinking about all those things that perhaps maybe troubles of what our customers are experiencing, and then many of us may be experiencing that. You think about workplace stress and productivity. Financial anxiety is creating significant distractions with employees spending roughly 14 hours a week just thinking about their financial struggle. And then 8 hours of those 14 are actually while they're in the workplace, which is pretty scary and pretty staggering if you think about that. Job insecurity is another opportunity. Thousands of healthcare workers, as I mentioned, have lost their jobs, have experienced layoffs. So that's something that is happening across Southern California, especially in Orange County. So we're seeing that as well. We're also experiencing budgetary deficits. Municipalities are grappling with significant gaps, such as a $64 million gap that we're seeing in Anaheim and a $30 million gap that we're seeing projected in Santa Ana. I mean, these are real issues that we're experiencing in Orange County. And so, and I've had the opportunity to learn a lot about, even before I came to Orange County, had to learn about Southern California just in general because I ran the San Diego district or region specifically. And then I ran part of Central LA as well. So coming into Southern California, learning a little bit about the dynamics of all the different counties and different cities and such, I had to learn about a lot of those opportunities. And so we're not only seeing it in Orange County, but we're seeing it across Southern California. So that's definitely an opportunity. The last thing I'll share is around shifting to flexible and temp work. Workers are experiencing increased pressure to manage multiple jobs because they have to do it in order to survive. And that's a reality that we're faced with, and that's pretty scary if you think about it. So those are just some things to think about just in terms of the key impacts that we're experiencing outside of Orange County and across Southern California as well. So
Very sobering
Yeah.
in terms of everything you're saying. So again, that financial literacy and looking out for yourself and making good decisions
Yeah.
along the way. So thank you, Natasha. Okay, so let's say, Christine, from your perspective, you work with a lot of people on trusts and wills and those things. What are some of the most common mistakes you see people made, or what we should be thinking about when we think about, that taking that planning to a next step?
I think part of it is just not taking care of it at all. So a lot of times people think they can wait. They can wait. I don't need to do my estate plan yet. That's something down the road. And they wait until sometimes they're incapacitated. By that, I mean they can't make the decisions anymore to create a will or a trust. The other big one is they've got something, they're not sure what it is, they haven't updated it in a really long time, and maybe it doesn't even align with what their assets are. So you need a trust if you want to avoid a probate. You need to have a will as a backup. You should really have powers of attorney for finances and healthcare. So if you can't make decisions, someone you trust can make them for you and can make them in accordance with your instructions. The other important piece, though, is, we can put together a trust for you, but you've got accounts and your lawyer doesn't necessarily know what they are and they're going to change. So you need to make sure that you're working with either an attorney or a financial advisor to ensure you have beneficiary designations properly made, that you've titled assets so that they're in your trust, so that if you pass away unexpectedly, your assets are going where you want them to go. We also like to think a lot about kind of next level planning. So most people know, well, when I pass away, I want my kids to share my assets. What happens if your kid's predeceased? What happens if you've had this will and trust for 20 years and now you've got grandkids who maybe should step into their shoes, but there's nothing in your plan about it? So sometimes it's just a matter of updating it. Sometimes it's a matter of sitting down and knowing what you have, going through it. And I would say just generally not necessarily relying on someone else to know for you, whether it's a spouse or, well, I did that a long time ago. I think my lawyer might still have those papers. Sometimes lawyers retire. Sometimes they pass away. Nobody can find your estate plan. It's not recorded with the county recorder. So what I would just recommend is at least every couple of years, giving yourself a little checkup, legally speaking, to make sure you have the right structure in place. Not just so that if something happens, but if you become incapacitated, there's a plan for you. There's a plan in place. There's somebody who can make decisions for you so you don't have to go get a conservatorship. And also so that you have kind of a team. You've got someone watching your back. So one thing I would just point out is we have this aging population, and there is this extreme financial pressure in our community today, is there is a lot more elder financial abuse than there used to be in our community. It's part of what I do in my practice is we help people recover when someone's wrongfully taken from them. And part of the ways to avoid that for your loved ones or for yourself is to have eyes. Have somebody have eyes on what's happening with your finances. This is really easy for somebody in a tough spot. And it's usually a family member. I'll just say, sometimes it's a neighbor. Sometimes it's somebody they met and brought in, the pool boy, for example. But it's really easy for someone who's stressed to come and offer help. And in the name of helping, take advantage of a situation where it's sometimes too late. Sometimes it's after many years that someone discovers how much their parent or their aunt or the person that they thought was independent has been taken advantage of. So the other piece of this is just practically speaking, know what's going on with your loved ones. Have a team around you. If you're secretive about what your own plan is for the future, it breeds an opportunity for someone to potentially take advantage, whether it's of you or of a family member. So those are kind of things I see every day. And, it keeps me employed. I don't want to see it.
Yeah, it's so frightening. My mom is 99 and still very involved in her finances. And it's difficult, right? Like having those discussions. So I'm curious, how early do you think somebody should start working on their first will and trust, and any tips for those who are part of the sandwich generation of how do they get their private parents to share more?
I mean, it's really really good questions. I would say for one, it's never too early to put together some plan for yourself as far as an estate plan goes. I would suggest if you have big life events, that's a really just cogent opportunity for people to go and do it. You have a baby, for example, you want to nominate a guardian in the event that something happens to you. You want your chosen person to take care of them. You do that in your estate plan. Similar things, you buy a house. You don't want that house to go into a probate if you pass away. You put together an estate plan. You start a business. There are other reasons to do it, but I think those are kind of the initial things that people usually will come into my office for. I'm fortunate to have fairly young clientele for the most part, although I did just finish an estate plan for a 90-year-old last week. So people are living longer, and she's fine. She's 100% there, and is able to do this, but not everybody at 90 is anymore. So I do think communication around finances within families is difficult, especially with certain generations. I feel like maybe the entry is to talk about the planning a little bit in a very gentle, open the door way, which usually is something like, hey, I just went and got my estate plan done. Have you guys taken care of that? It doesn't have to be you better get this done and leave everything to me, because all that does is shut the door. So I think it is a very fragile, difficult conversation for people to have, not just about the planning, but also about, financially, can you afford to stay in your home long term? Is there long-term care coverage in effect? Do we have an insurance policy? Is there a pension? As people age and as things change in their lives, I think there are opportunities for us to discuss with our loved ones kind of their milestones, right? So hopefully it's a positive conversation where you're talking about, oh, you're retiring. This is so exciting. Are you planning vacations? Have you spoken to an advisor? Like, what is kind of next big goals for you? And they should partially be financial.
I love that. So thank you. Really good advice. So Lindsay, you see people probably many people in this room have jumped from career to career or sector to sector or whatever. And they have a lot of maybe fragment accounts out there. Any thoughts about, in a practical way, how do you take hold of maybe all the different things? So any suggestions for how do you consolidate?
Sure. So I would say consolidation is one of the big. It's really difficult in today's day and age when everything is so scattered and there's accounts here and accounts there. And maybe it's not even just your 401ks. Maybe you have a lot going on in your financial picture because you've been engaged. Having it all in one place is really important. So there's tools out there like Quick and Simplify or whatever, just the ways to see all your accounts in one place, aggregators like that are critically important. Consolidating accounts as you jump from job to job, it might seem really intimidating to actually pick up the phone and call a number and talk to someone on the other end, but it's actually not that difficult of a process. And any way that you can simplify your financial life, to me, is something that results in greater chance for longer term success. The less chance you have of forgetting about a little 401k that's like maybe 4 jobs ago, the better. So we see all the time, we help clients all the time roll assets over. You have options when you leave from job to job. You can roll things into a new employer plan, or you can roll out into an IRA. The considerations when making that choice can vary from person to person, but oftentimes it comes down to a trade-off between do you like the investment options that your new 401k gives you? And now there's target date funds. Most employers have those target date funds built in. There's a really easy set it and forget it solution more often than not inside your 401k plan. So as you move from job to job, it's kind of one of those things in your mental checklist. I got to get my login set up. I got to get my laptop set up. I got to roll my 401k over if I want to. And so you can go to a new 401k plan or you can roll out to an IRA. As you have amassed more and you get to the later stages of your career, it can make sense to think about rolling out to an IRA, because what that gives you is more flexibility in your investment options. And as your financial picture gets better and better over time, you have more opportunity to get more sophisticated if that's something that you want. You don't have to. But I certainly do recommend to my clients as they move, consolidation just makes life easier. So those are things to keep an eye out for. And there's tons of tools out there. Record keepers have help desks that can help walk you through the trade-offs. If you work with an advisor, that's a great phone call to make to talk about the trade-offs between what you can do when you decide your career is taking you in a different direction. So if you're not sure, just by looking at your account when you log in, what to do, talk to someone. There's a lot of resources out there.
All right, great advice. Okay, this is the lightning round. So one quick myth that you'd like to bust in 10 seconds or less. Financial myth. So,
But I have so many. All right. The one I will say is that I hear often is all debt is bad debt. Well, no, that's not true because mortgage, those types of things, student loans, those are good debts. Those are good debts because it's actually getting you closer to achieving whatever aspiration or goal that you have financially. So that's what I would say.
all right, I like it. Okay.
I would say it's a brand new myth, but that AI can do everything for you. Okay, you need a good lawyer. You need a good financial advisor. You need somebody who won't just give you confirmation bias, which is what you're going to get with ChatGPT.
Great. I love it.
I would say the biggest myth that I see is you have to have money to make money. With investment success, it's more about just getting invested, starting early, and staying consistent, even if that's a $25 auto contribution. That's what it's about. And that leads to your biggest chance of long-term success.
Great. I love it. Okay, now it is time for questions from the audience. So certainly, apparently I'm getting them. Thank you. Thank you, audience. Okay. Okay, the first one's not a question, so I would get there. It's just a thank you to sit. No, it wasn't to me. Let's see. As a mom, I think a lot about helping my young adult children build credit and access capital. What recommendation do you have for parents who want to give good advice to their kids? How can they build credit and amass wealth early? Oh, so Lindsey, you want to start?
I can take the capital piece of that, and maybe you could take the credit piece, somebody else. I think one of the most important things a parent can do is as your children start to achieve success and enter the workforce, put money into the 401k that your company offers. Do it and get on a 1% auto escalation, because if you build that into your monthly budget and you get in the habit early of saving and acting like that money is not even there for you, the compound growth effect of having that invested over several decades is going to set your kids up for long-term success over time. So again, it kind of comes back to like the myth I busted earlier. The most important thing is just getting invested, even in really small amounts, starting early and staying consistent.
Anything to add? Heather?
I would ditto that specifically around the starting early part of it. As I think about my kids, I have a 26-year-old, 20-year-old, and a 16-year-old, and we started very, very early. And of course, because of where how I've grown up, with having to struggle with money, I learned that if I don't teach my kids these habits early, it's going to be very difficult for them long term for them to start to manage their own finances. So I would say start early. The earliest that obviously a student can actually get a checking account is 13. They also can get their own account at 17 without their parents, but start early and teach them the basic fundamentals of budgeting. You can never go wrong with that. That's number one. That's foundational in my opinion. Secondly is don't shy away from having conversations frequently about money, credit specifically. Why is credit important? We can't live without credit. You even need credit to actually rent an apartment, for heaven's sakes. You need credit. Everybody needs credit. And so having good credit is really, really important. And it starts with them understanding how it's going to impact them today and in the future. So having these conversations now is really important. And of course, you're going to have to determine how old is or how young is too young and how old is too old, and determine that based on, your own, you understanding what your kids' dynamics are. And all my kids are very different. So I had to start at different age groups for them to really understand and connect the dots for them. But I did that very, very early, and it's taught them, if anything, how to have a strong foundation and a love for money and credit and things of that sort that's going to be important in their life. So that's what I would say.
Great. Great, great, great. Anything to add?
I will say this. My kids are 7 and 10. One of them, if you give them $5, will immediately go and spend $5. The other one will keep it forever and will never spend it. So we did open bank accounts for them. They have their little bank accounts. I would just say I try to encourage them to save a portion of it, whatever it is. So if you get $10, save $2 every single time and put it in and forget it's there. And it's easy when you're a kid and you don't have access to the internet to look at it. But I think the goal is, just open the conversation up about money so that they're aware. They're aware what things cost. They're aware what the value is. I would much rather give my child an allowance and allow them to work toward something that they want to buy for themselves than just buy them that toy, for instance, so that they're building some awareness about this costs something. And quite honestly, I think it has more value to them when they actually go ahead and earn it than if I just handed it to them. So,
Yeah, I think it's great. Yeah, the value discussion. All right, so here's somebody. If you have 2 college kids with total loans amount of almost $300,000, I feel like this might be somebody's real story. This is just illustrative. If you have 2 college kids with total loans amount around $300,000, how can you build wealth retirement with this debt? What is the recommendation for fastest debt repayments? So maybe not all the specifics, but what would be a great path for that person?
I can take just a general stab at that. So chances are that total loan balance is made up of smaller individual loans that might all have different types of rate structures. So first and foremost, understand the details behind what that total $300,000 bill might look like. Some of those loans might be subsidized, so they're not actually accruing interest while your child's in school or for a period of time after the fact. Some of them may be unsubsidized. Some of them may have variable rates. Some of them may be interest-only payments. So you're not even actually attacking the principal until you've gone above and beyond that minimum payment. So read the fine print is one thing, because then when you understand the fine print, you can start to make a plan. You can say, okay, I want to tackle my highest interest debt first with the most amount of my debt repayment budget in my monthly budget. Gotta eat, gotta live, gotta have a place over my head. So maybe debt repayment falls below those basic needs. But then inside that debt repayment bucket of your monthly budget, there's all kinds of really important things to understand the details behind what to pay first, how to allocate those dollars so that they make the biggest impact early on and tackle that debt quickly over time.
Yeah. Anything else?
The only thing that I'll add is there an opportunity to consolidate? Could you consolidate that? Because you're absolutely right. There could be multiple little loans within that total, right? So thinking about opportunities where we can perhaps consolidate so you can actually put it all into one loan and perhaps maybe even get the interest down. That'll allow for you to pay a little bit more so you can get the loan off, and pay it off faster.
Yeah, that's right. Great advice. Okay, the next one's for you, Christine. Trust versus probate. Do you have a preference, recommendation?
I can take this. This is my wheelhouse, guys. You do not want to go through probate if you can help it. It's not just about the cost. There's no tax unless your estate is over $15 million per person. So probate's not a tax. It is an amount of money you pay to your lawyer that's based on a percentage of the estate and to whoever is serving as the executor or administrator. And that's a lot of money. And the worst thing is it takes a ton of time and it's all goes through the court process. So it used to take about a year to get through probate, start to finish. Now we're looking at like 2 years. And that's because our courts are so heavily impacted My first hearing date will be 4 months out. And then I've got to go through creditor claim period. We've got to do all kinds of work to get the property, essentially marshaled and then sold, inventoried, et cetera. And then at the end, you go to close. I have one county, when I file a petition to close a probate, they will set that petition out an entire year for hearing. So we can't close. We can't distribute any money to the beneficiaries of the heirs for 2 years from the date that someone passed away, roughly. So if you would rather just spend a couple $1,000s, get a trust put in place, it's definitely worth it for your heirs to avoid going through that. And it's an emotional turmoil as well, because you're just stuck in it. You can't just administer it. If you have a trust, you appoint someone you trust, essentially, to come in and manage those assets without having to go to court at all. So it's an entirely private process. It gives you financial privacy, and it quite honestly means everybody gets their inheritance a lot sooner, unless you structure it so that they get it over time. By the way, we do that. You can set it up however you like.
Okay, so everybody get a trust if you don't have.
Get a trust. You don't want to owe through probate. If you do, I'll help you. I'm here for you.
Thank you. Okay, the one that was so lovely is from the Cal State Fullerton's Women's Leadership Program. Thank you for being here. It's not a question, but it's so inspiring to see a room full of diverse, accomplished, motivated people dedicated to supporting and building up others from hopefully the next group of change makers. Thank you. So I think that's a lovely one. So thank you.
So nice.